everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll just give everyone a few minutes to get onto the webinar. It's good to see we've got 3 attendees already. Whilst we wait, I would just like to flag that the project website, northkensingtongate.com, will be updated throughout the consultation process. And you can find out all our contact details, timeline, FAQs, and when we submit the application, all on the website. Just wait another minute or two. Okay, great. I think it looks like we're ready to start now. A few more people have joined. So welcome again to the North Kensington Gate webinar. And can I just remind you once again before we start that all the information that we're discussing here today, answers to the questions and further details on the proposals are all on the North Kensington Gate website. And if you have any questions or queries, the email address is in the chat and on the website. That's northkensingtongate@4communications.com. So my name is Vaishnavi and I'm here from 4 Communications. We have been working with City and Docklands to provide the digital public consultation programme, and I will be hosting the webinar today. Today you'll be hearing from Simon Lee, who is the Construction and Development Director at City and Docklands. Followed by a presentation on the scheme from the architects, William King and Matthew Petford from Eliza Morrison. Then we'll move on to a Q&A session, starting off with the questions that you have sent in and then moving on to any questions that you would like to ask today. So let's just get the housekeeping out the way quickly. This webinar will end sharply at 6 p.m. So if we do not get through all the questions during this session, then please email us any questions that you have left using the email address or submitting it onto the website, and we will respond to every single one of them. Once again, the email address is northkensingtongate@4communications.com, and it's in the chat as well at the bottom of the screen. So during the webinar, there will be 2 polls which will pop up on your computer screen. The first should pop up now or in a few moments' time. And you'll be required to select one of the answers for each question. This will just help us to understand whom we're speaking to, what your priorities are for the scheme, and your thoughts on the developments once you've had a chance to listen to the presentation. So you can submit your questions during the webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can also vote any questions up and down using the thumbs up or thumbs down button, and those with the highest votes will be answered first. If you have any troubleshooting issues, you can let us know using the chat function. So if the video cuts out or if you can't hear us, please just let us know and we'll repeat ourselves or we'll restart video and audio. So just remember, the chat is for troubleshooting issues and the Q&A is to submit your questions. Just to remind you all that this webinar is being recorded. Great, so you should all have the poll on your screen. I will just give you a minute to answer the 3 questions. So the first one is, who are you? Are you a resident, business, community organisation or a local politician? And the second question is, are you aware of the 2018 consented scheme? And the third is, what would you like to find out more about? So you can click more than one of the options. So is that high-end massing, design, housing, commercial space, public realm and landscaping, construction, or transport and servicing. Great. So if everyone's had a go at answering the polls, can we just get the results up? Great, so we've got mostly residents and members of a community organisation here with us today. So 50% of you do know about the 2018 consented scheme, but then there are some of you here who don't know, so we'll be going through that as part of the presentation. Most of you want to know about the public realm and landscaping and the height and massing, so that will be covered in the presentation and in the Q&A, and of course the housing and affordable housing and transport and servicing also came up as well, followed by design and commercial space. So yeah, all of those things will be covered today, and you can again raise any questions in the Q&A. So without much further ado, I will pass it on to Simon from City and Docklands, who will just give you an overview on the scheme and the company.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Simon Lee. I'm the Development and Construction Director for City and Docklands Property Group. City and Docklands acquired the North Kensington Gate South site in December of 2019. At that time, the site had planning consent for a scheme of 164 apartments with ground floor commercial space. Of those 164 apartments, 44 would be provided as affordable housing units. We believe that the consented scheme had inefficient use of the floor areas and was delivering large apartments and exclusive penthouse floors, which did not meet our perception of the housing need in this area. We have therefore worked with Eliza Morrison and Quad, who were the original architects and planning consultants, along with the OPDC, in reviewing, rationalising and engineering the buildings to the stage where we're now proposing to deliver 208 apartments in a mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes with ground floor commercial space. Those 208 apartments, 70 are to be affordable housing, so of the additional 44 additional units, 26 are to be affordable. The alteration to the design to achieve our current proposal has been made with very little discernible alteration to the overall height and mass of the consented scheme, and without change to the high quality external design and finish to the buildings. I will leave others on the panel to go on to more detail as to how this has been achieved. If we are successful in obtaining planning consent for the proposed scheme, we intend to commence construction early next year. By way of a background to City and Docklands, we have been operating as a London-based property developer and investment company for in excess of 15 years. We have a track record for delivering schemes from planning through to the completion of construction. We are currently on site delivering a major scheme in North Acton where there are 701 apartments, 208 of which are for affordable housing. We have built a mixture of for sale and build to rent schemes, and we also retain ownership of a number of apartments in each of our developments. We also have our new management brand operating under the name of AWOL, which is a way of life, where we will be managing our own developments with our own staff based on site to deliver our own style of management to ensure high levels of engagement with residents, occupiers, and in integrating with the local community to build a new level of living experience. We have previously partnered with housing associations such as the Guinness Trust, Metropolitan Housing, and more recently Broadway Living. I should also advise you that City and Docklands own the site known as Mighty Yard, which is located directly across Crudge Lane, opposite from North Kensington Gate, where we currently have a consent for 241 apartments in a build-for-rent scheme where 76 of those homes will be provided as affordable housing. and where we expect to commence construction later this year. We are here to deliver much needed housing, active commercial and retail frontages, and a vibrant street scene with public realm to Scrubs Lane at this pivotal entrance point to this significant regeneration area. Thank you, and I'll hand back to the panel.
Great, thank you, Simon. We'll hear a bit more from him during the Q&A session. Now we'll move on to the presentation from William and Matthew. So if you'd just like to share your screen.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Petford, and my colleague Will King is joining us from Allies and Morrison. We are a architecture and urban design practice based in Southwark in London, and have considered ourselves to have developed a reputation in developing well-crafted buildings and thoughtful placemaking, with a well-established record for designing and delivering new high-quality homes in London. If we move to the next slide. The site we're talking about today, of course, is North Kensington Gate, and is located within the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, and lies at the meeting point of the Grand Union Canal with Scrubs Lane and at the Mitre Bridge crossing as we meet it. The two nearest railway stations for the site for commuting will be Wilston Junction, top left, and Kensal Green to the top right. To the east of the site, the site shares a boundary with St Mary's Cemetery, which is part of the conservation area and contains a small number of listed structures. We have Wormwood Scrubs to the south, and of course we sit within the Old Oak Common regeneration area. Our site boundary also defines the eastern edge of the Old Oak and Park Royal Opportunity Area, which aspires to transform Old Oak into a vibrant new London district. Although the area is now smaller due to the loss of land owned by Car Giant, the recent consents for the new High Speed 2 Old Oak Common Station, number 8 on the plan, and Mitre Yard, number 4, will act as a catalyst for future developments in the area. Our site, identified in red, number 1, occupies an important position along Scrubs Lane, at the gateway to what will become one of the UK's largest regeneration projects. The site itself, site currently contains 2-storey light industrial buildings, which are in poor condition, and offers little in the form of active frontage to Scrubs Lane itself. The east boundary of the site to St Mary's Cemetery is formed by a high brick wall, which currently encroaches on the Canadian War Memorial. The site benefits from local open spaces, for example, the Grand Union Canal and Wormwood Scrubs and Little Scrubs, just to the south. Our brief, working with City and Docklands, has been to enhance the existing 2018 consent with an aspiration to increase the number of homes, improve buildability, and review the mix to provide more 1-2 bedroom homes for key workers and young people starting out on the property ladder. We've also looked at how the commercial space along Scrubs Lane could be improved to attract new shops and small businesses. We have done that by starting through a sequence of diagrams. This first one illustrates the 2018 consent from Scrubs Lane, where we had very generous, overly generous, floor-to-floor heights within the commercial space, 7 metres. That incorporated first floor mezzanines as part of the commercial offer, and very generous 3.3 metre floor-to-floor heights for typical residential accommodation. Our appraisal of that suggested that through reconfiguring and rationalisation of the plan, and largely our cycle parking, we felt that we could deliver the same amount and more of quality commercial accommodation at ground floor with a reduced height of 5 metres, by relocating all of our cycle parking into dedicated space within the basement. We've also saw opportunity to reduce the residential story heights to 3.1 metres in height. And in doing those two moves, you can see identified in grey, we have been able to incorporate 1, 2 and 3 new floors within the, broadly speaking, within the massing of the existing consent. Where we've identified in red, there would be a modest increase in height to the tower and a modest increase in height to building 2, running from left to right, buildings 1, buildings 2, and the tower on the far right. Next slide. That same level of rationalisation we've taken through into the plan. We're seeing this in elevation now, but by establishing a regular and ordered grid and frame to our building, we've been able to simplify and simplify the facade and then the elevations and improve the efficiency of our typical floor plans. Here with that grid, those rationalizations to the grid, you can see that in red, this is where we are evolving from the 2018 consent, dotted in white, whereby we equalise buildings 1 and 2. They share an equal frontage to Scrubs Lane, and the tower element is slimmer in profile. Part of our rationalisation has been that we can provide a slimmer profile to the skyline, albeit with the modest increase of just circa 2 metres in height. Next slide. Those moves have enabled us to deliver, as Simon pointed out earlier, 44 new homes on top of the original 164 from the 2018 consent. That brings us to 208. It increases the number of larger 2 and 3 bedroom homes, more suitable for families. We have an intention to deliver up to 70 affordable homes within that number as well. And those increases in commercial floor space at ground floor, but also enhanced commercial floor space, whereby we are now full frontage to Scrubs Lane and dual aspect with opportunity for light and views out to east and west through the site. If I now hand over to Will, who will run through the scheme in a bit more detail, we'll pick this up at the end. Thank you.
So the appearance of the scheme is consistent with 2018 consent, but we've made some improvements to really enhance the elevations to the scheme. The scheme elevation is ordered by a regular grid of reconstituted cast stone, which reference the mausolea and gravestones of the adjacent cemetery. Placed within the frame are secondary profile panels of light bronze and metal cladding. These recall the industrial history of the canal and are profiled to catch the sunlight at different angles to introduce a subtle variation to the appearance of the scheme. The elevation is further defined by a 3-part composition of base, middle and top, which helps create a calm order of windows and recessed balconies to the main elevations. Our current proposals have also looked at refining the ground floor plan, which is being reconfigured to maximise the dual aspect commercial space that fronts onto Scrubs Lane. This provides a flexible space which we imagine would attract new shops, small businesses, that we think would really enliven Scrubs Lane as part of the wider development of the surrounding sites. We've also maintained that the proposed building line to buildings 1 and 2 is set back from Scrubs Lane to create generous public realm, which will complement the emerging network of local open spaces and public realm established in the Old Oak Park Rural Opportunity Area. Moving up the building 2 shared roof terraces are provided on level 7 and 8, which will provide an accessible outdoor area for residents and visitors. These roof terraces will contain seating and open areas for exercise, rest and play, with a variety of planting trees, as well as spectacular views across London. As part of our proposals, we have also replaced the solid parapet of Building 2 with a lighter, more transparent metal and glazed balustrade to increase the visibility of the roof garden from Scrubs Lane. This also helps to increase the perceived height difference and articulation between the 2 buildings 1 and 2. We've also made some improvements to the tower design. At the top of the tower, the reconstituted stone frame and parapet have been extended down to the underside of level 23 to further emphasise the slender and elegant proportions of the tower form. At the top, level 24, the building line steps back to form a wraparound terrace to increase the amount of sky visible from street level. The external plant, which you can see in this 3D view here, is further set back and screened to reduce its visual impact at street level. In this slide, we can see a view of the scheme from the Grand Union Canal, and in particular, you can see how the corner balconies help soften the silhouette of the tower. City and Docklands are also working with the OPDC to improve the affordable housing offer to align with local demand and affordability requirements. The scheme is tenure blind and all residents will have access to the communal, internal and external amenity spaces provided throughout the scheme. And I'll just pass back to Matt, who will talk a bit about the homes themselves.
Me, myself? Yes, so within the scheme, we have not only increased the number of overall homes within the scheme, but we've also provided, wherever possible, provided an uplift in the number of larger units. So where once we had 2-bed, 3-bedroom units, homes, we now have 2-bedroom, 4-bed homes, and equally for our 3-bed 5s become 3-bed 6s wherever possible. So there are an increased increases within the individual homes, which make for more usable, more generous living environments for our residents. If you move to the next slide, that is represented here in terms of the overall split. Almost 2/3, 64% of our homes are now 2 bedrooms or larger. And I think that covers the presentation. Yes, in terms of timeline, apologies. So we're May-June now in our consultation process. The scheme intends to submit a planning application towards the end of this month, and would look for a determination of the planning application in autumn of this year. As Simon mentioned earlier, the intent then would be to start on site as soon as possible in early 2021, and would be looking at a sort of a construction process that would see the building coming online and residents moving in within 2022. And that concludes our part of the presentation. We'll hand back to Vaish.
Great, thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah, we'll just close the screen. So now it's time for the second poll. So hopefully you found that presentation informative, and the poll should just pop up on your screen now. So yeah, once again, I'll just give you a couple minutes to complete this one. This just provides us with an opportunity to hear your feedback on the scheme, and your feedback will be incorporated into the report to the council that we'll be submitting later this month. I'll just give you a minute or two to complete that. So we've been joined by James Guthrie from Quad, who is the planning consultant on the scheme, and he will be answering some of your questions today.
Hi there.
Right, hopefully everyone's had a chance to answer the questions. Right, shall we move through to the results? Great, so people do agree that this land, the industrial land, should be for a residential-led development, and that the public realm improvements will help regenerate the area. People are mixed on that second one. Some people do agree that the shops and workspace will benefit the local economy, whereas others disagree with that comment. People are seen mixed about the scheme and whether it's been well designed and appropriate for the area. In terms of the affordable housing, 67% strongly agree that it is required in the area. Great. Thanks for that, everyone. That will help inform our report to the council. So let's now move on to the Q&A. So we've had a fair few questions that have been submitted online before the webinar. So we'll run through these first, but there will definitely be time for the questions which have been submitted by members of community organisation in the Q&A today. So we'll definitely have time to get to those a bit later. So let's get started on the affordable housing questions. So one of the residents asked, what percentage of affordable housing are you providing, and what is your definition of affordable? So they basically want to know, are these flats for local people, and will there be pour doors, or will the affordable units be pepper potted throughout the development?
I'm happy to come in to that one. So in terms of affordable housing, the affordable housing offer is currently the subject of negotiations with the OPDC and with the GLA. We are aspiring to reach 35% affordable, which is a significant increase on the 30% offered by the existing consent. In terms of what kind of affordable housing we're looking at, we're proposing a mix between London living rent and shared ownership. For those who don't know, London living rent is for middle income households who rent and want to build up savings to buy a home, and there's a significant discount to the market level rent, which we go through a process of agreeing with local authorities. Shared ownership is an affordable home product, makes it easier for first-time buyers to get on the ladder. You essentially buy a percentage of the property, and you have the opportunity to staircase up to full ownership should you wish, or to sell that portion and then move on the property ladder somewhere else if you so wish to. What was the second part of the question, sorry?
The second part was, so will the affordable units be pepper potted throughout the scheme, and will there be pour doors?
The scheme will not be pepper potted. The affordable housing is going to be secured in 2 of the 3 buildings. This is in accordance with the wishes of registered providers who were spoken to in drawing up these plans. They wish to keep the units self-contained, and this principally keeps costs and ultimately rents down. The scheme is going to be tenure blind though, so that kind of means you won't be able to tell the difference between the affordable housing and the private. So no, there won't be any private and no pour doors. In terms of affordable housing, it will also have access to the shared communal facilities across the site.
Thank you. So our second question, so we actually received a statement that said, you know, why are you updating the proposals? Is it simply just corporate greed? And have you considered the cost of the environment? So have we considered the sustainability side of this proposals?
I think if we go to the first one about potential corporate greed, no, that's not the aspiration at all. City and Docklands have acquired the site from the previous applicant, so City and Docklands weren't involved in the original scheme. They're taking this one over. That was a different scheme. It was seeking to deliver a series of luxury apartments, oversized units, car parking for residents who had their flashy cars, that kind of thing. We're now moving to provide a scheme that better meets the needs of the local housing market. So that's providing more private homes, a lot more affordable homes. And those private homes will also be available at costs that's much more affordable in general to Londoners and people in the local area.
Great. And then just the second part of that question, it was on the environmental costs. So is this development sustainable? Have you considered any sustainability measures?
Yeah, so we've got a company called Borough Uphold involved, who are our environmental consultants. Who are sustainability consultants. They're involved. We've been involved with us from the start. They've also been involved across the road at Mighty Yard. There's a number of planning policy documents you have to consider about stuff like the circular economy, which is making sure the way we build stuff is as sustainable as possible, reusing materials. There'll be construction management plans to ensure the impact on the environment is minimalised. But yeah, I mean, in short, yes, we are considering all those things. City and Docklands as a company, that's what we want to do, but also new guidance is coming out that means we have to do these things. So I think you kind of rest assured that we have to get anywhere with these kind of proposals now.
Yeah. Simon, do you have anything further to add on this?
No, not necessarily. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. So let's move on to the next question. So another comment that we received was, yeah, thank you very much for carrying out a much needed development in a deprived area. But what type of commercial space are you going to introduce? Will there be any shops?
Okay, I can take this one. The commercial space has been identified as located on the ground floor facing Scrubs Lane. It also has views across the rear of the development and is dual aspect. The reason for reducing the height of the space from 7 metres to 5 metres was the 7 metres was over generous, and for the type of units in this area we don't believe that mezzanine floors or second floors are necessary. It's all about active frontages. The space is divided, space is provided so it can be divided up for a number of users. So obviously at this stage it's difficult for us to identify any future users, so we're keeping flexibility for those users who wish to come along later. But our intention is it will be occupied and it will form part of the community that we will develop in the scheme as a whole.
Great, thank you. So the next question is that the local residents said that that Scrubs Lane is a very busy north-south route, and creating tall buildings in this area will vastly increase the traffic. How do you seek to manage this? Have you considered the implications this will have on the roads?
I can probably come into that one as well. So many of these developments, so I think that the three principal developments on Scrubs Lane are 2 Scrubs Lane, which is at the top of Scrubs Lane, there's Mighty Yard, and then there's us at NKG. So many of these developments will be car free. So compared to the existing traffic use on Scrubs Lane caused by all the industrial uses, we actually expect to see a significant reduction in traffic once these schemes are delivered. So at the moment, these are industrial sites with lots of big HGVs going in and out. Bringing forward residential car-free development will actually reduce the amount of traffic along Scrubs Lane. We do recognise that the site's PTAR rating is lower. It's 2 at the moment. It's a bit of a quirk in terms of it's just over 900 metres from Wilson Junction, which is why it falls down a little bit. The scheme has, though, been designed with this existing PTAR rating in mind. The transport assessment to be submitted has been subject to consultation with OPDC officers, with TfL, and demonstrates the scheme can be delivered as car-free, which is the aspirations of all levels of planning policy at the moment. There are existing bus services in the area. There's going to be a new car club space to be provided, and transport contributions will be provided by a developer to help fund local improvements. From personal experience, I've moved into a car-free development, and I use the car club, and I thought I'd miss having a car, but I use it I've used it maybe 3 times in 2 years, and it's the way these things are moving on, and I totally understand the concerns of locals, but it has been something we've considered in detail.
Yeah. And just on the car-free part of the scheme, how are you going to ensure that people aren't going to be just clogging up local roads? They're going to bring their cars regardless of the policy.
Okay, I can take that one. We expect in negotiation with the OPDC that we would enter into a unilateral undertaking with all of the occupiers and the purchasers of the unit, such that they would sign documentation to confirm they would not be able to apply for street parking permits. So effectively there would not be the ability to clog up local roads. Our experience also is on other developments we've completed. The amount of cars at the site or used in the car spaces is far lower than we expected. We quite often have basement parking areas where we have quite a few empty parking bays.
Okay, great, thank you. So just the last question. This refers to Grenfell. So they said, in light of what has happened there, Is the scheme compliant with the latest fire safety guidance and standards?
Okay, I'll take that one as well, if you don't mind. Yes, I mean, we're very, very much aware of the awful incident which happened at Grenfell. We were developing before, and we've been developing during and since the Grenfell situation. We have moved on nowadays. We engage our fire engineers to assess the architect's design schemes. The architect is designing the scheme in accordance with building regulations at all times. We also have building warranty providers such as NHBC and others who are constantly reviewing their current methods, documentation, and we are seeing an increase in firefighting devices. I can assure you that on this development, each of the apartments throughout the development will be fitted with a fire-rated sprinkler system. And all means of escape, staircases, fire doors are all brand new, will be fully operational, will be approved by the necessary statutory authorities. So we are confident that we will meet all current regulations. In fact, we will be exceeding the majority of those regulations.
Good to hear. Right, so now we can move on to the questions that have been submitted today. So I see there are a few here from a member of a local organisation. So I'll just start from the top. The first reads, height was always an issue with this scheme given its proximity to the cemetery. Aurora were using A&M as architects. Why did A&M not come up with the reduced floor-to-floor height in Scheme 1, which would have led to a lower building in 2017?
Okay, that's for us. The scheme back then was obviously with Aurora, a different client, and was working to a different brief to the current one. The brief back then was for a far more heavily serviced form of apartments, so our increased floor-to-floor heights allowed more ceiling zones for comfort cooling to an extent, and modestly opportunity for slightly higher ceilings for some of the larger penthouse apartments within those spaces. If the brief had been differently back then, we would have considered the lower 3.1 floor to floor that would have changed the massing. But I think that's where Simon introduced the scheme earlier. City and Dockland saw an opportunity to, with a changed brief and a sort of a new demographic, a sort of target market in terms of who our new residents may be, that there was an opportunity to reduce the floor to floor while still providing generous accommodation, fully compliant with local plans and regulations and heights.
Hopefully that answered that one for you. So the next one is, what is the density of this revised scheme in housing units per hectare?
Would you like to do that, Matt?
Yeah, well, I can do, yeah. So we can get back to the actual specifics, I'm sure, but we have been improving the housing mix at North Kensington Gate and have sought to increase the number of private and affordable homes within the scheme. Where possible, we've maximised the opportunity to deliver homes principally within the existing, the massing of the previous consent. I think we can get back to you on the actual specific numbers. I don't have that to hand, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so we've got your contact details. I think you've emailed previously, so we can we'll find out the exact numbers and email that to you in the next day or two. So the next thing that they've asked is, the previous scheme envisaged a PTAL level of 6. This assumes a PTAL level of 2. This results from previous plans for a Hythe Road overground being dropped. How is a scheme of this density justified at a location with such limited access to public transport?
I'm happy to say that one. So yes, the previous scheme did envisage a PTAL level of 6. It now envisages a PTAL level of 5. That's, as you are totally correct, Hythe Road we don't know if that will come forward at the moment. TfL is still hoping for it to come forward, but it's absolutely not something we rely on. And just to be clear, in the answer to the earlier question as well, we're not relying on the PTAL 5 either. We are relying on PTAL 2 to deliver our scheme. In terms of how we can justify the density, I'd like to think we kind of covered that a little bit earlier. The London plan, OPDC, everyone encourages developers to make the best use of existing sites, and that's what we've sought to do here. Allies and Morrison to work hard to deliver an improved scheme, principally within the existing massing, and through meetings with the OPDC and with the GLA, they have supported the level of density that we are proposing on site.
Great, thank you. Do we have any further questions from our viewers today? Right, so once again, the question that we couldn't fully answer today, we'll email you directly. And if you do think of any further questions, please let us know, and we'll either email you directly or it will form part of a FAQs page that we're building onto the website. So in the next few days, all the questions that we've answered today and any others will be uploaded onto the site, so you can check directly on there. If there's any on there that don't answer your queries, just email us, or you can even give us a call. All the contact details are on the website. So it looks like we don't have any further questions today. Great, so thank you all for joining us on the webinar. It was really great to see so many of you today. It's great that there's so much interest on this scheme. We hope you really found this useful and it answered a lot of your questions. Okay, so I would just like to say that the webinar has been recorded, and if you would like to watch it back, or if you'd like to share it with any others that weren't able to watch or join us today, then it will be uploaded onto the website over the next few days. So if you just check back next week, this should be up on there. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today, and to our panelists, thank you for the discussion that we had today and the presentation. And as there are no further questions, I guess we can end it here. Great, thank you all.
Thank you very much.